High atop the battlements. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where we love the audience as much as Canadians love collard greens. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America and all ships at sea. Welcome to The Last Radius. Glad to have you with us. Let's talk about 4D chess. The 4D chess games that converged and culminated in the political marriage of Joe Biden to Kamala Harris. But in order to understand that marriage properly in that game of chess, we need to climb into the time-traveling DeLorean of our minds and visit the winter of 2020. After the first 3 weeks of primaries, Biden is buried, third place. He's won 0 primaries. South Carolina is looming. Campaign cash is drying up. Debate performances have been disastrous. And the feeling is that he is days away from exiting the race. But he's got one crucial advantage. He is not an honest-to-God communist, unlike the other guys. And the party establishment would really prefer it if they didn't have to nominate an honest-to-God communist, even if Biden is the only alternative. So it's not an embarrassment of riches. But having the party leadership view you as the least terrible of a series of bad options will not feed the bulldog by itself, because any Democrat who wants to win South Carolina needs the endorsement of Jim Clyburn. So all of the candidates go hand in hand to Clyburn, seeking the endorsement, and in an unexpected development, Joe Biden is the guy who winds up getting it. It wasn't really unexpected, though, because maybe to the general public and the news media, for the party leadership, they had already decided that they were going to have to nominate Biden if they wanted to have any chance to win. So Clyburn knows the expectation from the party is that he gives Biden the endorsement, resurrects his campaign, and nudges Warren and Sanders off to the sidelines, just like the Democrats always do when their voters are in danger of choosing the wrong nominee. But though the endorsement may have been a foregone conclusion, nobody told Clyburn that he couldn't also expect some concessions. And while nobody has confirmed that there really was a quid pro quo, it seems reasonable to surmise that Clyburn probably got an assurance from Biden that if nominated, he would choose a black woman running mate. Because the moment he won the South Carolina primary, never having mentioned it before, he suddenly starts telling everybody who would listen that he is going to nominate a black woman running mate. And in that moment, after around 2 decades of presenting herself primarily as being of Indian American extraction, Kamala Harris suddenly becomes black. Some might say unnaturally black. Some might say obnoxiously black. Some might say cloyingly black. And you can't really blame her for making that pivot, since she knew as well as everybody else that the only other potential candidates in that pool were Karen Bass and Barbara Lee, both of whom, once again, are honest-to-God communists. So to put it more succinctly, the political marriage between Biden and Harris came into being because they were both the same thing, the best of a series of bad options and the only one who wasn't a communist. And this was a real lifeline for Kamala. She was also a declared candidate for the 2020 nomination, but in the actual event, she had to abandon her campaign before 2019 was over because she had no money. And everybody thought she was stupid, but she still got her seat in the Senate. But the Senate is so boring. Sometimes you have to speak into a live microphone. Sometimes people ask you questions. Sometimes you come off sounding like a dumbass. And when you're a senator who sounds like a dumbass, sometimes that shit goes viral. And then people start saying you're the biggest dumbass in the whole Senate, whose name isn't Mazie Hirono. And I think we can all agree that's a status that nobody would ever want. So if you're Kamala Harris and it's early 2020 and the lane in which you find yourself is the lane of dim-witted senator who had to abandon her presidential campaign before the first primary, it's hard to look around you and see a future that contains any sort of political upward mobility. But then Biden starts winning primaries and he says he wants a black woman running mate. So there's only one thing to do now, and that is initiate Operation Blackface. Because if Joe Biden wants a black woman running mate, then by God, I am going to be the blackest woman since goddamn Hattie McDaniel. And you have to give her credit for this part because she worked really hard to invent a fictional backstory for herself, a black story, if you will. All of a sudden, she starts regaling us with stories about civil rights marches and collard greens and bathtubs and chitlins. And if that was the only thing, I might have been willing to overlook it, but it wasn't. Far from it, in fact, because when you're trying to build a black story that's impressive enough to attract the attention of the dementia-riddled copes of Joe Biden, that's not going to get the job done. Also, I would like to enter black story into the official program lexicon alongside Smarmalade. Please make a note of it. No, Kamala knew she was going to have to work way harder if she wanted to make herself a jive soul sister enough to be the first black woman running mate. But while the Oakland protest story, though it's almost certainly bullshit, it contains surface-level plausibility, if nothing else. She started to get a bit lazy after that when she was weaving new bullshit stories into her tapestry of black story. It was very important to Kamala when she was speaking to black audiences that she be perceived as liking black food. Them chitlins and them collard greens, y'all. In fact, I trust I'm not the only one here who remembers Kamala famously saying she used to clean collard greens in the bathtub. Did she do it on her off hours from McDonald's? Who can say? And look, if you don't know the first thing about this person's background and life history, I guess it's easy enough to accept this stuff at face value. But if you look at Wikipedia for 8 seconds, you might say, wait, It says here she was living in goddamn French Canada from 12 to 19 when she says her family was feasting on soul food and celebrating Kwanzaa. Why would her Indian mother be cooking black Southern soul food? Who knows? Who could say? Why would a Hindu in Canada be celebrating a made-up black American holiday like Kamala's mom? Again, who can say? The important thing is that somehow, improbably, with a big assist from the party establishment and the news media, Kamala Harris did manage to successfully position herself as a black American woman who grew up in an Indian household in French Canada. And when you combine that with the fact that she's not a communist, she managed to position herself in the lane of I am the only one Biden can pick, no matter how much he doesn't want to. But already we can see the devil's bargains piling up. Biden has promised to pick a black woman, and the end result is he gets stuck with a running mate that nobody in their right mind would pick in 1,000 years. And that will have consequences, because the gods of short-term political expediency always exact their long-term revenge. Biden and Harris win the election, allegedly, and things go smoothly, sort of. Unfortunately, it's not really possible to keep the president and the vice president away from live microphones, so if nothing else, the two of them wound up launching a lot of memes, creating a lot of fodder for YouTube content creators, for which they have our gratitude. It was really like manna from the heavens. Sometimes you're sitting there with writer's block, not knowing what the video is going to be about. You see a story about Joe Biden wandering off into the jungle looking for Uncle Bosie's crash site. Problem solved. But here's the thing. During whatever the machinations were that wound up with Biden being anointed the nominee, the black woman running mate thing wasn't the only promise that was extracted. There was also the promise of only serving a single term. But then he ran for re-election. Why? Well, who can say? But I'm sure it's totally unrelated to any business dealings that any crackhead sons may or not have been involved in. And the party didn't handle this development as well as it might have. They knew they had to get rid of him. They knew they couldn't actually go into the election with him as the candidate. But by the time they got around to taking action, the primaries are over. He is the nominee. So now you've got a problem that's worse than the problem you already had. If you had nipped it in the bud, there would have been some sort of democratic process that could have played out, but we can't do that, can we? It seems like each time we leave it to the voters, they try to pick Bernie Sanders, and we can't risk that happening again because that's a real pain in the ass. But where does that leave us? If we wait until after the convention to throw Biden out the window, if we leave it till barely 90 days out, we don't have much recourse except to pass the nomination to the number 2 person on the ticket, Vice President Kamala Harris. And this is where the devil's bargains pile up to the point where the snake starts eating its tail. Out of a desire to avoid a communist, you installed Biden in the presidency. Out of a desire for race pandering, you installed Harris in the vice presidency. And it worked in the shorter term. The victory you sought, you won, allegedly. But all these things coalesced and really bit you in the ass when the chickens came home to roost. We are going to be talking about movies later in the show, as we sometimes do, and you can't help wondering, what will the Hollywood biopic of Kamala Harris look like? You know there's going to be one. About 15, 20 years is my guess, just long enough that she's barely alive, but far out enough so that her deeds aren't fresh in the public memory. And it'll be very fawning, very hagiographic, but it's too bad that they won't be making it during the strong, powerful girl boss era of cinema, because that'll be long gone. And in my mind, I imagine that movie playing out a lot like the Reagan movie with Dennis Quaid, which is the current most fawning, most hagiographic political biopic I've ever seen. And I love Reagan, but that picture is a real piece of work. Jon Voight doing very bad with a Russian accent, playing KGB agent. We watched Ronald Reagan for years. We fear his love of freedom and democracy. Why would this governor of California be on Soviet TV in '66? Who knows? But it's the Wikipedia version of a biopic, really. Just a hardworking young man from the heartland, loves America, hates the godless communists. The Kamala biopic would be much the same thing without the hating communism part. Only items from the official biography. We won't see any wild Sacramento Coke parties from 1994 or anything else she doesn't want to be in there. And don't get me wrong, the biopic will be some years in the future, but she's going to get the Netflix documentary much sooner than that. It's part of the standard Democrat Party retirement package. You get the book deal, then the Netflix doc, and then there's the beginnings of your retirement Easter egg. And I expect they'll announce the Netflix doc a little over a year from now, shortly after she makes it official that she's not running for president in 2028. Because you have to be a damned fool to believe she's going to run for president. But nevertheless, despite being the most disastrous nominee in U.S. history, she is currently leading in the polls somehow, so it's hard to blame her if she wants to parlay that into some easy cash. If she says she's running, then she has to start a campaign. All of her donations have to go through the campaign. There's all kinds of limitations on how you can use it, but if she just pretends she might or might not run, then she can accept all the PAC money she wants and use it however she likes. How do I know all this? Because she just bought a house for $8 million goddamn bucks in Malibu, which, it has to be said, she is slumming it a little bit in the neighborhood she's moving into, because $8 million in Malibu gets you a little fixer-upper that needs some TLC. The point being, she wouldn't be selling out $8 million for a new pad in Malibu if she was planning on being president or running for president. The only way she can afford that is if the other parts of the golden parachute are still incoming, the Netflix doc and the I might be running for president game, so send me money. How am I so certain that she's never going to run for office? I am so certain about this that if she runs for president, I will do this program in Lady Curmudgeon's underwear for 3 weeks. I swear. So there will be that Netflix doc that hardly anybody will watch. There'll be the biopic, which probably will bomb, and neither of these will materially influence public perception all that much, probably. But then the task is going to fall to future historians. And they may view Kamala Harris as a very fascinating figure indeed, to the extent that one woman can typify all the abuses and excesses of a bygone age. She might look like Marie Antoinette looks to us. When we look at Marie Antoinette, we say, how could the ancient regime be so decadent and disconnected from events that they couldn't see they were all about to be overthrown and decapitated? And a couple hundred years from now, our descendants might look at Kamala Harris and say, how could they have been so obsessed with race and gender and personal characteristics that they elevated such a dull, dim-witted, unexceptional, talentless person to the highest echelons of power? And it's a good thing we're going to be all long dead, because we might struggle to come up with a good answer. And with having said that, all super chats tonight will be donated to Cat Might Run for President, Really, I Swear, LLC. So give early and often, because deciding whether you're going to do a thing can be very expensive. And I am done now. I am fresh out of monologue, and I know you're all very sad about that, but the exigencies of showbiz are what they are. Thank you for your kind attention. I now convey you into the loving custody of my distinguished colleague, your illustrious co-host, the one and only, your friend and mine, Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.
Tactical nuke incoming!
We will work together and continue to work together to address these issues, and to work together as we continue to work operating from the new forms, rules, and agreements that we will convene to work together. We will work on this together. Vice President Kamala Harris. And that is not word salad. That is word coleslaw. All right. How about that? I was actually thinking that your intro would probably be a little longer. Figured you had more kibble to play with.
I've got some. Yeah, you remember how I had to cue it up and start again?
Yeah. Okay,
I accidentally wound up on the wrong speed setting, and my 20-minute monologue became an 11-minute monologue with huge sections having to be omitted. But I did it as best as I could.
You did great. I was actually fixing to come in and say that was absolutely magnificent. I just expected it to be a little longer, which was the reason for the change ultimately, is that if we're going to be going into the first 30 minutes being the intro, the monologue, the quote, and that stuff, then let's just make that the intro, and it'll be it's a little smoother, I think, if you're hitting the button and it works. But we'll get used to it. We'll make it work. I think that'll work out better.
It was just my execution that fell short.
Oh, no, you did absolutely amazing considering how fucked it went right there with fucking starting. Because he he laid it out. I was wondering what was going on. He laid it out. It was a beautiful fucking start. And I looked over and I went, oh, it didn't start. Why didn't it start? I guess you didn't hit the button twice like you're supposed to, or whatever it is. I don't know. Anyway, welcome to the Blast Radius. Let me do this thing. Welcome to the Blast Radius. We have a little bit of a plan for the show. I know it doesn't seem like it. We're actually semi-professionals at this. We've been doing this for a long time. But we have both watched the new Running Man and the old Running Man, and at least one of us has read the book.
Exactly, one of us has read the book.
So we're going to do a vocal comparison because because of the way last week played out. I'm not doing any trailers this week, but usually we do trailers with this. But apparently Aztec Batman was one bridge too far, bro.
Yeah, they really flipped out about that Aztec Batman shit. Aztec Batman must be a sore subject.
It must be, because I wasn't even saying anything bad about it. I was just saying like Aztec Zorro might make more sense. But what do I know?
Studios appreciate it when you promote their products. I don't know, call me crazy. Because what possible nefarious copyright violating reason would there be for us to play trailers on this program, except to make people aware of things they may not be aware of, and perhaps possibly go and watch them?
The entire reason that trailer was played was because I had never heard of it and didn't know it existed.
Isn't it a big part of the reason why trailers exist at all?
I thought so.
I've never heard of this. Yeah, I've never heard of this thing. Let me go watch the trailer and find out more about it. But no.
From Orbit. Boom.
Copyrighted from Orbit, bitch. Yep.
Yeah. Like took us down.
Hands off my Aztec Batmanitlan.
So I was just thinking about it the other day. I was laying there about to drift off to sleep, and it occurred to me that there are so many layers of cultural appropriation going on in that particular piece that I think I know why they pulled the plug.
Yeah, you're probably not wrong. You know what's amazing is how terrible a movie can look that I used to think was a cool movie.
Which one?
The Running Man from '87, the Arnold version.
Oh, all right,
Man.
So unitards aren't a thing, although I kind of wish they were. I'm not gonna lie, the new Running Man gives me really big Demolition Man vibes. I feel like at any second now he's going to come around the corner and there's going to be a Taco Bell there and somebody's going to say, "Live well."
I'm not sure how I feel about the new. Well, I know it's terrible, the new one. I don't think I understand exactly all the different ways in which it's terrible. The number one thing about it that I can't stand, and I know this is a conversation that we've had before, is that I can't stand it when a movie refuses to decide whether it is a parody of itself. And I couldn't avoid that. The '87 movie, there's no problem with that. There's no tongue-in-cheek anything. There's no people who look like they're about to blink at the camera. It's completely absurd, and everything about it is absurd. But it is the people who are inside the film are taking the world of the film seriously, and that's what you need in order for the audience to suspend its disbelief for a couple hours and attentively consume the story that you're telling. But you can't. Go ahead.
Allow me a moment. I read the book, so I'm going to do a bit of a philosophical waxing here to try to explain that blinking at the camera part. In the book, the way this is done is it doesn't specify the city. It's like Metropolis or the Grid or whatever like that. The network is like all of Manhattan has been taken over by the network. That is its own geographical nation. The show takes place outside of that area, right? So the show is filmed inside the area. They bring the people in, they show what they did, they do the whole Running Man spiel, that whole thing, and then they're literally tossed out the fucking door with $500,000 of cash that's worth 10 times what your cash is now. And basically a get out of jail free card that makes cops look away. And that card works for like 48 hours or something. You get a 2-day head start or something like that. And after that, it's the world's your oyster, but you got to figure out how to get around in it because every single checkpoint on Earth is looking for you. Now, keep in mind, this is involving a future in which nuclear power has alleviated all energy constrictions and travel is virtually free. It's a right. The part where he starts doing that Deadpool thing and doing the fourth wall breaks, like almost inadvertently, where he doesn't quite look at the camera, but it's almost there. The camera's set up from the angle of what he's looking at, and he looks at it, but it looks straight at the fucking camera, and then it turns and shows what he's actually looking at.
That's a good call, because sometimes that's exactly what you're expecting is some little Deadpool quip.
Exactly. And so the part about that is this was written in a time period when the internet was literally in its infancy, and it was written by a person who is stark raving batshit crazy. But he made one effective prediction, and that was people like Johnny Somali, who are literally self-aware of their self-awareness, so much so that they become unaware of their environment, right? And the Running Man in the book was a case of average Joe Blow ordinary who happened to have some really, really culturally diverse friends and hits the end of his rope, signs up for the Running Man. If he doesn't, his daughter's going to die. The Running Man, turns out it's all a sham. The whole thing is completely corrupt from inside out. And by the time he gets to a point where he can say something about it, his ass has already been tossed out on the street, and he's literally sketching it down the road going, fucking shit, now what? Transition to the 87, what was it, 87? 85.
Yeah. So our hero has a daughter in the book?
It was a daughter, I think. But yeah,
okay.
The whole all the plot is in there. The gears, the new one does it better than the old one, as far as the book is concerned. And especially that weird self-awareness that you didn't like about the film is deep and thick in the book, so heavy that it's kind of, like you said, it throws you out of that suspension of disbelief a little bit, because who could really be that self-aware? And there's one other thing that was different from either of the movies to the book. At the end, where the whole universe decides that Richards lives, there's never any actual evidence that he did. Every time they pull in Richards, it's a different dude. It's somebody else. When the dude shows up at the coffee shop and pays for a fucking car or whatever it was that he bought, it was just paid for. That wasn't Richards. That was some other guy that just played the part of Richards long enough for everybody to believe. In fact, in the book, if I remember right, the dude that was putting the pirate radio shit out, it was him operating in Richards' stead. Now, there's a bit of a caveat here. If that's the case and Richards actually died, then who's bankrolling the supposed winner?
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so now we come back to the 87 production. This is done from the perspective of almost a Escape from New York kind of feeling, or Escape from LA. This is an entire city. The entire city is basically inside of this huge filming studio, and the city was just closed off one day, and whatever's going on in there is what's going on now. And you got to survive for 30 days. Good luck.
No, it's only 3 hours in the Arnold version.
Oh yeah. That's right. Everything's compressed.
Yeah, and then in the new one, it's 30 days, and in the other one, the 87 one, it's you have to survive for 3 hours because apparently that's the length of the broadcast, and you have to defeat all of these certain dudes who are basically like pro wrestling personas, including Asian Hockey Man. I didn't know Asian Hockey Man existed, but that's the first guy you have to get through is like big hulking Chinese hockey goalie dude.
I just want to sing this one tune for you and see how you respond. Night bright, light bright, turn on a magical shining light. There's that one dude, what was his name? Photessence or something. It's like Spotlight or whatever. And he's literally wearing a Night Bright set. That shit tickled me. So that's where I couldn't watch that movie anymore. I'd already read the book, and when I come across the movie, I was like, oh, fuck, Running Man. I put it in, and I'm like, what is this trash? And it's trash from start to finish. They tried real hard. It just didn't work because Arnold Schwarzenegger is not Joe Blow everyman. A walled-off section of Manhattan is not an entire world, and the freedom that is expressed in the book is not shown in the film, except for as, disregard for authority.
Yeah, and if they had made that when he was farther along in his career and more of a giant global megastar as he would become like 5 or 6 years after that, I think it would probably be a much higher quality picture. But that's an interesting period in his career. He's had a couple of big hits. He's had Terminator and he's had Predator. 87, he does The Running Man, and then he does quite a departure for the last couple of years of the 80s and starts doing comedy shit. Like he does the Twins movie and he does the Junior movie. He fucking gets pregnant and gives birth and everything. But that incongruously winds up being what helps to launch him into the stratosphere, because then in 1990 you get Total Recall, 91 Terminator 2, and that's after those two is when they strapped the rocket to his back and he basically owned the box office for the next decade or more. Him and Stallone.
So yeah, well, when it comes to action heroes, it was him, Stallone, and Van Damme. Pretty much. I mean, Steven Seagal was over there doing this number in the corner the whole time, but he wasn't casting spells. He was just trying to waft his gas away from him.
Yeah, but he had a very brief peak and flamed out early. I guess you can say they all flamed out, but you still think of Stallone and Schwarzenegger when you think of action heroes. I think more so than Van Damme and Seagal.
Over the top, bro. Fucking over the top.
Yep, you're not wrong, Scotty. Yep. Total Recall was crazy good, especially for people who watch it today who don't remember 1990 might think it looks cheesy, but for 1990 when it was brand new, that movie was an absolute mindfuck, dude. That movie was so freaking cool, like indescribably cool.
Very strange weirdness about all of this. Total Recall novelization of the movie was written by an individual named Pierce Anthony, who is the same person that wrote the Xanth series that I regularly wax philosophical about. The Running Man was written by an individual called Richard Bachman, also known as Stephen King. And it's supposed to be a horror. It wasn't meant to be an action picture, and that's one thing that I complain about with both movies. The first movie actually gets some of the horror better than the second movie. The first movie gives you the sensation that you are trapped inside of a very claustrophobic space with a lot of people who either want to kill you, want to turn you in, or both. Like, you have no friends. You are completely out in the cold. There is no support. The second movie takes that same claustrophobic feeling and exchanges it for a pulse. Sometimes it's too open and sometimes it's too enclosed, but you're never in a comfortable environment. Like the first apartment that he goes into, and it's like literally a bed and a door, and that is it. There's a chair wedged in between the bed and the door, and he can see the street from laying in the bed. That is the most claustrophobic apartment I've ever seen in my life, and they catch him there, right? And he gets away and he blows the building up. In the Schwarzenegger version, which, by the way, that part is sort of in the book, it's a little different. The hand grenade landed in his lap in the book, and the new safety grenades, and this is kind of explained in like a little brief thing in between chapters, was like, in such and such a blah blah blah, this model of grenade was issued to such and they still use them. This lands in his lap, he grabs it and closes it, and then runs out of the door with his bag. And he gets out of the door and over the edge of the broken elevator to fall 3 floors onto the top of an elevator, climb into the elevator, and then slide out into a basement, right? Like, he gets away, but he only gets away because they fucked up. They fucked up and tipped him off. And the only thing that tipped him off before that in the book was the fact that, I swear to God, I've seen that street preacher before. That dude was also outside the studio when I got thrown out. And now he's 18 blocks this way in, lower freaking Brooklyn. And so just before everything sets off, he cocks his head to the side and is like, I know you. And then the grenade lands in his lap, and it's on like Donkey Kong from there.
I'm interested to learn that the protagonist does have a child in the book, because in the 87 movie, he doesn't have a wife, doesn't have a kid. He's just what is he? He's a military helicopter pilot. His superiors order him to bomb a building full of unarmed women and children, and he says, "No, motherfuckers, I'm not bombing no innocent women and children. You crazy!" And
right.
And then they tackle him.
And there's
and
a
beat him
similar
up.
scenario in the book. The similar scenario has to do with a group of rioters outside of like a network building. And he is like the captain of whatever troop that he's supposed to be using. They've been issued non-lethal and pepper-style rounds, rubber bullets and whatnot, and they're fixing to go out and break up the riot, when he realizes that his whole squad is packing heat, not non-lethals. And he turns and goes, "Hey, can we swap out with the next squad with the non-lethals, because our non-lethals didn't come in? We've got hot bullets. We're firing hot rounds over here." And they're like, "No, we've got our orders. Go, go, go." He's like, "If we open fire in this crowd, it will be an absolute travesty." And he gets shot in the side of the head with a rubber bullet, and later gets the option of being a traitor or taking the Running Man bit. And one of the things about the Running Man is you have to voluntarily come in and do it. And so they literally take him from like the police station or whatever and toss him out in front of the network building. And then stand there with rifles and wait for him to walk inside. After that, he's under the network's care. So he really never gets a choice.
But in the new picture, where as opposed to opening, he's in the helicopter, does the thing, they frame him, and that's how he winds up being a criminal and being on the show. In the new one, I don't want to say the first 20 minutes of the picture is a white male humiliation ritual, but it kind of is.
It kind of is.
The very first frame in which we meet our hero, he is holding a small biracial child, whom he then takes home, and we find out that he's got a strong, powerful black woman of color wife who don't need no man for nothing, especially not when she's down stripping at the strip club, because he has a black woman wife who is a stripper, and he has to sit home and babysit the kid while the wife is off stripping. And look, I was half expecting that later on in the film they were going to cuckold him completely, and we would find out that the kid was actually some other dude's kid. I seriously would not have been surprised if they did that. It kind of tempers my feeling a little bit, not a whole lot, but a little bit, to find out that him having a kid is actually congruent with the original source material. So that helps a tiny bit, I think. I mean, I never try to read too much into these things, but it almost has the feeling of, well, if we have to have a white male protagonist, we are going to humiliate him as much as possible before we start our proceedings in earnest.
Right. That's another one of the things that I really appreciate not in the first movie, but in the second movie, is it sticks a lot closer to what the book was trying to get across. Although, in my opinion, it fails to become the horror, the existential crisis, the endless. Have you ever seen Hardcore Henry?
No.
Okay, you're going to watch Hardcore Henry this week, and we'll talk about it next week. But I'm not going to do any spoilers because, hell, there's so much shit going on in it, you couldn't spoil it. This movie should have been filmed in more of a Hardcore Henry format, where the guy literally gets a freaking camera implanted into his head and then is slapped on the ass and sent out the door at a count to 20. Like, it would have had a better existential crisis thing going on, where you're constantly at the end of your fingertips and you know, broken both your. By the end of The Running Man, the guy that's in question has 3 broken ribs, a patched up punctured lung that was patched up by a vet that he took hostage or some shit, right? He fell through a dude's roof and a fire got caught, and they drug him out as part of the survivors, and the first guy who gets to him is a vet. Is like, holy shit, you've got a punctured lung. And he looks around and drags him out of the pile and fixes him up, and homeboy goes and runs away. He literally just sits up and sprints out of the fucking fire. And everybody's like, who the fuck is that? He's like bits and pieces of hair floating away and shit. And then the next scene is him driving in a car that he stole in like Miami, and he's headed up the Eastern Seaboard at Mach 7 in a nuclear powered automobile. Anyway,
So go ahead.
The whole bailing in the tape and all of that stuff, the entire system is rigged. And the idea of pre-filming some of the tapes would not work until the appropriate time for that tape to be used. You notice when you opened it, it had all the weeks laid out. Like, you had to do one a day, 10 minutes, and on camera. And they're all laid out, all 30 tapes right there.
Yeah, I've got much to say about the tapes. Remind me.
Yeah. That tape does not activate until the next 24-hour period is up. And they're preset before he leaves the network. And so the whole pre-recording shit was completely out from the beginning.
So the book, if I'm not mistaken, is written in 1982. What year is the story? Do they depict the story as taking?
It's like, I want to say 99 or 96 or something. It's
Because
not. It's the not too distant future.
In the Schwarzenegger movie, it's 2017. And they take a rather interesting approach to the things that they want to depict as futuristic and just 1987. For example, whoever they got they hired to be the hairstylist, she was like, I don't give a fuck. These people are all just going to have 80s hair. Similar with the costumer who costumed the dancing ladies on the Running Man show. They're just going to look like 80s aerobic chicks. They're going to have 80s hair. I don't give a fuck. The cars, very obviously 80s cars. Other things they try to imagine. It's like they're trying to achieve the same sort of aesthetic as Back to the Future's version of 2015, but generally falling short of it, really, if we're being honest. And as we were watching the Schwarzenegger movie the other night, we were wondering out loud, because in the movie it's made in 87, obviously, and the year that they're depicting is 2017, so 30 years into the future, in other words. And we were wondering how they were going to handle that when we watched the new movie. Like, what year are they going to say it is? And they really don't say what year it is in the new movie. They take kind of a picking and choosing approach to how the visual aesthetic is going to work and what technologies are going to be depicted. Because, for example, like you said, he's got to send in videotapes every day. The TV monitors all still appear to have picture tubes and be, old school. Like, many of the cars are 80s cars. The dancers on the show still look like 80s aerobic chicks. They still have
straight out of solid
hair.
gold.
And yet, because we wanted to change the circumstances and the parameters of the game that's being played, everybody has a smartphone that's capable of capturing high definition video, but we still have videotapes and we still have CRT televisions. I'm just saying, I know it was a tough assignment, but you can't really square that circle. You kind of have to choose one or the other. It just seems incongruous when you switch back and forth. Yeah,
I think they did. There's a scene in the second movie where and it may be 2017. That actually makes sense. There's a scene in the second movie where he goes and talks to the guy he gets his disguises and his fake IDs from. And he walks over and he looks at the whole wall of these big CRT televisions from back in the day. And he goes, Jesus Christ, you still got these things on the shelf. And he's like, shit, I can't keep them on the shelf. Those are TVs that don't watch you. And then when you get into like the ritzy rich places, you find some of the old 50s like black and white tubes sitting in the apartments and stuff. And it makes a certain amount of sense where your everyday average Joe can afford to have one of those massive fucking Zeniths, whereas a rich bitch politician or whatever has a desire for privacy and wants to be able to watch TV without it watching him back. And so they have the space age mid-50s sleek design of exactly the same set. And I think that loosely squares the circle that you're complaining about. It was in the movie.
I'm just saying, everybody's got smartphones, but they use videotape. It's not really a complaint. It's just something that one notices when you can see that the filmmakers are kind of trying to keep the things that they like and change the things that they think is going to serve their, like the little camera drones. Those were a cool thing to have to better serve the narrative. Those were pretty awesome, actually. Those were a good addition. They
were almost verbatim in the book. The only difference is they were described as cruciform stalkers or something like that. They were looked like modern drones, actually. And the description that I in my head from the book was, 4 little propellers and a little camera, and that's it.
Yeah, in the movie they look like tiny Death Stars.
Yeah, I kind of dig the spheres because it's just creepier. I think we've been culturally treated to enough Phantasm movies that everybody kind of freaks out about a flying sphere.
Well, yeah, and they also serve a narrative function because each time the little camera drones show up, you know business is about to pick up and shit's going to get serious.
Yeah, it's definitely time for business, no doubt.
Yeah, so it's kind of a good foreshadowing device.
So another change from the second movie to the first movie, from the first movie to the second movie, is, in my opinion, the narrative and the dialogue is founded much more fundamentally in the relationships between the people involved in the story than in 87. In 87, these people have never heard of that dude. They don't have any idea what's going on. The only reason they know is because they get network TV, and that's it, right?
Yeah, whereas, it was just about getting the characters into their starting positions as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and then letting them go. And in the book and the second movie, it's more about tracking them, finding them. And here's the distinction. In the first movie, the underground that's developed is developed because of their isolation from the rest of the world, along with their proximity to the network technology. And so they're pirating all of this stuff out of the network system in order to fight the network from within, sort of, right? In the book and in the second movie, the network is a ubiquitous, ambivalent umbrella corporation. The U.S. government is merely a puppet of the network, and that's true for all the other nations on Earth at this point because of the grip they have on propaganda and the narrative, right? The second movie and the book take that to its logical conclusion, where at some point in time, a group of people would utilize new technology and new techniques to fight against the established narrative of the network by utilizing the basically literally passing notes physically. The difference is that where Richards in the first movie was the literal face of the revolution to come, Richards in the second movie was merely the spark to start the revolution. It wasn't him that was fighting it. It was never intended to be. It was everyone else who was all sitting around with their own ideas on how to deal with this and hadn't done anything, like the dude in the house, right? Dude in the house was sitting there for 25 years. His dad died 25 years ago, and he had done nothing but prep. Nothing but prep for the day that he'd have to do a toe-to-toe with the network. And that's what that was for. That's what the entire thing is about, is that revolutions don't happen because something bad happens. Revolutions happen because someone good stands up against something bad happening, and usually something bad happens to them.
Something else I wanted to mention is the when you juxtapose the way that female characters are portrayed in 1987 compared to the current day. And we like to think, or many of us like to think, that those depictions were so offensive and so problematic and so chauvinistic back then, and are so much less so today. But are they really? And what are we really trying to accomplish? Because I will tell you one thing that the updated new version of the Running Man story doesn't have is absolutely any hint whatsoever of female sexuality, except for the sexy dancers at the start of the show, which is about probably 25 seconds of screen time. Aside from that, absolutely nothing. In the 87 version, we didn't need to give our hero a wife and a daughter or anything like that. He runs into Maria Conchita Alonso just randomly by happenstance, and she winds up, sharing a large part of the story with him. And let's be honest, her main function in the story is to be hot piece of ass. And there's nothing wrong with being hot piece of ass. Maria Conchita Alonso was a fine piece of ass. And she was, what else she was? She was also a strong, powerful woman of color. But it wasn't forced into the narrative. It wasn't in a world where every female character has to be a strong, powerful woman of color. We saw a woman who was a fine piece of ass, and then her character showed that she was also a strong, powerful, capable woman of color. And we said, wow, how about that? That's impressive. Why was it impressive? It was impressive because it was unexpected. Nowadays, it's just what every female character is, and that's a problem with current day Hollywood.
It makes narratives an issue. Okay, so the wife. Let's talk about casting, right? First of all, just the fact that there's no wife, there's no kid, there's none of that involved in the 87. That's gonna throw a bit of a wrench in the works. Arnold Schwarzenegger's not your average everyday Joe Blow dude. The different hunters are, well, they're like you said, WCW superstars except murderers.
Asian hockey man, beware.
It would not even surprise me to find Hacksaw Jim Duggan over yonder with his fucking 2x4. Oh, right. That wouldn't even bat an eye right next to the nightlight guy.
Now you're going to make me start talking about the Hulk Hogan documentary.
We'll get into that in the last 30 minutes. Wait, are we already in the? No.
No, we got half of the show left.
Right, we're good. Okay. The second movie, much more faithful to the book from start to finish, in and out. There is one thing I kind of want to tug back on. His wife is a damn fine piece of woman flesh. That is a very beautiful woman to me. Now, is she like unitard? What's her name? No, not
Maria
the same
Conchita
thing.
Alonso.
Oh, Maria Conchita Alonso. Jesus Christ.
Well, and you know what I can't figure out is why Maria Conchita Alonso, a fine Cuban woman of Cuban Venezuelan extraction, would be the owner of history's worst fake Latina accent, which she has in The Running Man. That is the worst fake Latina accent I ever heard in my life. It's like she kind of turns it off and turns it on in the middle of the same sentence, and we can't tell if she's doing the accent or not doing the accent. It kind of just comes and goes, But that's fine, because I am just looking at her because she is such a fine piece of gear.
Yeah, she's a damn fine woman.
The other thing about that picture, the 87 picture, if camel toe fetishists have a top 10 movie list, I guarantee goddamn to you this movie is on it, and it doesn't discriminate by gender.
Right. What was it you said? You're more familiar with with Arnold Schwarzenegger's junk than his urologist.
Yeah,
I told you to make him turn it and cough. Bro, do you know why a doctor grabs you by the balls and tells you to turn your head and cough?
Tell me.
Because if a man grabs you by the balls and tells you to cough, you'll do it right in his face every single time.
I never thought about that, but it makes sense.
It does, especially that first time, right?
Now go ahead and cough directly in my face, son. Yeah, that's yeah.
So,
And here,
all right.
here all these years, we thought there was a medically indicated reason to turn your head, but no, the doctor just doesn't want your fucking germs.
It's the casting of the main character Ben Richards in the second movie, I think, is pretty spot on. The only way I can't off the top of my head think of a better casting for someone that has the physicality that the role would require to like fall out of buildings and jump off of buses and tuck and roll through fucking trains. Dude, the scene where he jumps from one train to the other, I just jumped up and screamed, "Ow! Goddamn, ow! Ow!" Because it wouldn't kill him, but goddamn if it wouldn't hurt.
That one got a pretty big eye roll at my house.
No, I hear you, dude. I hear you, and I get it. But
And
the fact that they didn't show that landing kind of pissed me off.
I think I'm still undecided on whether I'm a Glenn Powell fan or not. I really like him in war movies, in Top Gun Maverick, and in the the movie he was in with Jonathan Majors about the Corsair pilot.
I like him.
I can't remember the name of it, but in non-war movies, I find him much less agreeable, and I don't know if that's just me or if he's just because some actors are like that. They just do better in military type roles than they do in other type of roles, and
Well, he does decent cowboys, and in my book,
yeah,
that's important.
yeah, I have seen him in one or two westerns. So you raise a fair point. But speaking of westerns, we need to watch a damn John Wayne picture one of these weeks or something, because
Okay.
we need to talk about something that isn't terrible.
That's
As much
the
fun
point.
as it is to talk about terrible movies, I mean, terrible movies are much easier to talk about. Don't get me wrong. That's probably why we spend so much time talking about them.
I didn't. That's where I'm getting with this movie. I didn't dislike it. I really liked the second movie better. I know you didn't like the race swap of the announcer, but I love the casting of who they got. I really like him as an out.
I actually didn't mind the race swapping of the Richard Dawson role, and it's such a much smaller role in the second movie than it is in the first one. In the first movie, Richard Dawson, the real life game show host, the guy who you remember from Family Feud, feeling up all the hot teenage daughters and whatnot, he has almost as much screen time in that movie as Schwarzenegger does, and his performance is the best thing in it. His performance is the only thing keeping that movie from being like Razzie's level awful, which is kind of a revelation. He was really only exclusively a game show host at that point. I think he had some kind of special friendship with Schwarzenegger that he was able to get the gig. I think it was the same thing with Jesse Ventura. I think that's how Jesse Ventura got to be Captain Freedom in this movie, and I think it's also how Jesse Ventura got his role in Predator. But yeah.
Well, I mean, I ain't got no hate for Richard Dawson when it comes to the Running Man, because I mean, he nailed the role. He was basically the character.
He does that role as well as that role can be done, and that his performance is an absolute revelation for a guy who hadn't done any dramatic acting probably for the last 20 years. Just absolutely chef's kiss brilliant. He's as good as you can be in a bad movie.
Scotty, go ahead and take you a lap on that one, brother. You got me beat with a stick.
I wish I was old enough to have met the Duke.
Right? God, 2 pounds of fucking undigested porterhouse in his goddamn colon.
But
drunk as hell.
In all likelihood, he's going to be the king of the box office again 10 years from now when there's an AI version of him making brand new movies directed by Robot John Ford.
Maybe. I mean,
co-starring AI. That's where a lot of people think I'm wrong about that, about where the AI thing is going. They think all the money making potential is going to be in invented actors. I think all the money is going to be in reanimating dead actors from the past.
All right, I hear you. But hear me out on this.
Okay.
I don't think that what you're talking about is wrong. I think it's going to happen, but I think it will be more of a sort of niche genre, something along the lines of like spoof movies, right? Where they're going to do an isekai style UHF meets The Remote right?
Yeah.
And you've got to go adventure through ancient cinema in order to try to accomplish some goal in the game or what the fuck ever. And of course, in it, you have to run across, not just the actors themselves, but the actors playing the roles in the movies, that kind of shit. I think that's more likely to be juxtaposed into some new genre of niche film than to literally have a brand new run of Elvis movies or a brand new run of The Duke. I don't think the new audiences are going to glom to it the way the old audiences did, because the entire concept of the Americana, and I'm not saying it won't be successful, because there's lots of old motherfuckers out there like you and me who would sit down and watch that damn picture just to see if it worked.
Yeah, and the sole determining factor is going to be how much income potential there is in it, and who's to say until it plays out in the real world.
Well, I doubt there's a whole lot of income potential for doing things like The Duke, because I don't think they're in public domain as a personality yet. And so, as long as their work is still copyrighted, their likeness and whatnot will still be under some sort of restriction.
But the people who do the licensing on the dead celebrities, the dead celebrities that you regularly see, on the top 20 list of top earning dead celebrities, those people are good at being on the front end of new licensing opportunities, and I think they're probably going to continue to be on the front end with whatever AI revolution is going to take place. But I think also that it's not going to be a phenomenon that is limited to dead actors. I think it's going to be something that living actors can take equal advantage of, as we've already seen with Brad Pitt in that one AI fight video not long ago. That he probably got a nice paycheck from that, didn't have to leave his couch, just licensed his likeness. And who's to say you couldn't do entire movies like that? Once the technology gets good enough, who's to say whether you were actually on that set or not, or whether it was your digital doppelganger?
The digital doppelganger terrifies me, though, dude. I don't have anything for that. There's enough footage of you and there's enough footage of me on the YouTubes to train an AI to do an absolute spot-on imitation, and even imitate not only my nuance and inflection, but my deep Southern drawl. Absolutely. And that shit should be Mother Nature's kitchen, bro.
Yep. But we have been surpassed. And now we just have to beg the machines for mercy.
So I don't necessarily have a problem with the machines taking over if they can do a better job than fucking Congress or Bill Gates or whoever the hell it is at the levers of power, because right now they're kind of jerking off.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you were really good at selling software doesn't give you a license to socially engineer the entire human race. Sorry, Bill. I still have a hard time getting from point A to point B, and how making a lot of money selling software entitles you to be one of the masters of the universe. I know that money translates into power, but the presumptuousness of these people that think success in some certain field means expertise in all fields. And
in all fields.
Yeah.
Classic confirmation bias. And it's everywhere. It's rampant throughout society. You participate, I participate, we all do this. It takes something shaking up our expectations for us to take a realistic look at the things we've involved ourselves in, to realize, wait a second, this isn't exactly what it purports to be, and I've been in it long enough to realize that there's a lot of contradictions in the things that we're trying to portray, and then stop it. Just fucking quit it. Stop with the contradictions, And I really try, but at the same time, there's things I just believe. Life experiences has taught me stuff that I can't purvey unto you through linguistics, but just trust me, bro.
But you would never start believing a thing just because some actor or athlete or celebrity you liked said that you should believe it. Because you would never invest a person you've never met with that kind of authority. You would never invest a person with that kind of authority whose expertise is in a totally unrelated field and doesn't have any authority in the field they are presuming to speak about. And that's something we have really, really, to our detriment, lost track of since this century began. And it's probably need to start working on fixing it. I would submit.
So what has become apparently America's biggest Achilles tendon is the unwillingness to do research, and then the unwillingness to disbelieve that research. We need a bit more cynicism in the population, a bit more willingness to attempt to prove something that they've researched,
Yes.
Instead of just believing the AI, put it to a test, give it the sniff test,
And we need to develop a better understanding that research does not mean searching for confirmation of one's priors. Research
exactly
involves a willingness to be wrong, to challenge one's own previous conceptions, and because that's what research is, that's what learning is. You have to be willing to say, God, I was wrong about that. Has there ever been a time in your life when you were able to say, I believe right down the line every single thing I thought 5 years ago? Of course you can't, because you're a conscientious man, because you're a self-reflective man. But too many of us are not conscientious and self-reflective, and we spend our lives thinking we are doing research, but we are just searching for things that reinforce the things we think already, when we should be. The whole point of science is for the scientist to prove his own hypothesis wrong, and all forms of human inquiry should be governed by that same principle. It shouldn't be about proving that you're right. And if you are right, that's great. If your research confirms your correctness, then more power to you. You did the work and you wound up being just as right as you thought you were, but you need an equal willingness to be wrong if the research leads in another direction. And it is astounding to me that as our access to information has increased, as we all walk around today with the entire collected repository of human knowledge on a little rectangle in our back pocket, we have managed improbably to become more ignorant than we've ever been before. And it's primarily because we are just searching for confirmation bias, as you mentioned earlier.
Right. And it's gone farther. I watched a guy. All right. So I'm not a debate bro, and I don't really do debate panels, but I fell backwards into the debate bro sphere, and I've hosted a handful of these guys. And I've noticed this tendency, especially when they're doing debate prep, to utilize AI to find all the citations and all the little things and everything. Yeah. And something that I've had happen several times with these people is they'll go get some citation by putting in what is an example of slavery post-Civil War or post-Reconstruction in the South, and it spits out this article about some people that were taken captive and kept on an island in Mississippi and used as slaves 100%, but it was not state sponsored. And as soon as the state of Mississippi found out about it, they busted that shit right up, right? And I was like, dude, this does not serve the purpose that you were trying to purport it does. And he's like, yes, it does, and just moves on and starts arguing with someone else because he didn't want to deal with the topic at hand, and he didn't want to deal with me because I read the article in the 12 seconds that it took him to fucking send it. And suddenly I'm fucking ground beef. He won't talk to me, he won't look at me, he won't have anything to do with me because I read the article and was like, dude, this doesn't even prove what you were saying it proves. This is not proof.
What point was he attempting to make?
That structured state-sponsored slavery was actively taking place in the South up to the middle 60s. And the example that he was specifically referencing was a case where a guy was kidnapping folks. He was basically going into the cities and hiring people to come work on his farm. And then once they got out there, they couldn't leave. They were slaves. And they were slaves, but it wasn't state sponsored. It was literally this freaking guy living on his own little island out in the fucking swamp of, 1,000 acres or whatever. And he literally put up walls around the joint with barbed wire and hired guards. And him and his family kept about 5,000 people on there as literal indentured servants slaves. But it wasn't just black people. They weren't bought and sold. They weren't imported through any legitimate means. They were kidnapped victims forced into slavery, not what he was trying to use it to prove, not state-sponsored, bought and sold, purchased people. through a legitimate course of business, which was what he was claiming. And I was like, that is not at all the thing that this depicts. This depicts a kidnapping colony, not slave.
In other words, he had a thing that he wanted to say in a debate, and he went looking for some isolated instance that would rhetorically satisfy the thing that he already decided was true, even though it kind of tends to refute the thesis he is attempting to promote, because if isolated instances are the only thing you can find, then obviously the thing that you are asserting existed at the population level did not in fact exist at the population level.
And the article itself actually explains the whole thing. At the very beginning is like, the end of the Civil War ended this date, Reconstruction took place, Jim Crow took place, then this took place, and that took place, civil rights took place, and then this guy inherited all this land and just refused to let people leave it. He literally took it over as his own little country, and since this portion of the county didn't have any type of postal code or no towns, no stores, no nothing on this property, there was no reason for the state or the county to get involved in anything taking place on private property. As long as no one complained, there was no legal question as to what's going on over there, regardless of how many barbed wires and concertina wires and palisades and all that shit that got built, right? No matter how much it looked like a concentration camp, it's not a concentration camp until we have a witness. And he was trying to say that, and I wanted, the reason he got mad is because I asked him what the prompt was he put in the AI. I wanted to know specifically what he asked the AI to get this particular article, because it's almost
it's a reasonable request.
Right? I thought so. And he got really mad and suggested that he didn't use AI for his debates. And I didn't, and I was like, that's not, you used AI to pick this up, obviously.
Everybody uses AI for everything. Fucking get over it.
Because if his prompt was an example of slavery in the American South in the 60s, this was a perfect dead nut ringer. It did an excellent job. But if your example was state-sponsored slavery in the South in the 60s, this was a total whiff, right?
Well,
and it all comes down to the prompt.
If you wanted an answer that was real and comprehensive and objective, here is the question you would type in. You would type in, did state-sanctioned involuntary human servitude continue to exist at the population level after the end of the United States Civil War? And the AI would say, no, of course it didn't. What are you, fucking high? Or if that's not the answer you want, then you can get more granular and find your little isolated instance that you think is going to back you up when you're debating whoever you're debating on the little debate panel.
Right. Well, that was kind of, excuse me.
You got this.
No, I don't. So that was the thing, was that he had two debates. One was about state-sponsored slavery. The other one was about human trafficking. And I think because he had just done one and was fixing to do another, his AI was stuck in the new search parameters that he had been putting in, not the old ones, because we were discussing the previous debate and he was already researching for the next debate tomorrow. I think he just slipped. And that's all I wanted him to say is, oh, well, this is what I put in, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And I would have moved on with my freaking life. But instead he said, nah, it proves it. And then tried to like bull run his way through the rest of the conversation. And it worked for about 10 minutes until one of the other guys on the panel went, wait a second, what was Sasquatch saying? What up, Sam? Welcome in.
At that point, you're not using the AI as a gateway to additional knowledge. You're just using it as a rhetorical human shield.
Yeah, and I know a few people over there that do that kind of thing.
You think the robot somehow gives you intellectual backup, that it somehow validates your false assertion, even though your assertion is still false. If the assertion being made was what I understand the assertion to be, which, and no serious person would even argue in favor of that assertion. So you're coming at the thing from a pretty out of left field viewpoint to begin with. And I don't even know what rhetorical purpose that would serve. I mean, even if the assertion was correct, then from his perspective, how would that bolster the argument that he's attempting to make? That's a mystery to me.
Like I said, I think that me tossing in the question from the previous debate and asking, for any type of citation associated with it, I think the answer from the AI was corrupted by the most recent searches he had been doing in general human trafficking for the next debate that he was doing. And the state-sponsored aspect of it was kind of forgotten by the AI due to the number of prompts that had gone through it since then. And so it gave him an example of slavery in the South in the 60s. It did not give him an example of slavery in the South state-sponsored in the 60s. And so
he needs to be keeping his AI windows segregated from each other, and he's not doing that.
Well, just like elections, apparently the only way to have a fair elections is to segregate all of your peoples.
Absolutely. We cannot achieve racial justice until we have segregated elections. It's like I said in the monologue, eventually the snake always consumes its own tail, and there it is, right there in living color, in all its glory.
So I'm just waiting for who was the president in Idiocracy? Camacho. What's his name?
Camacho. Shit. I was actually going to mention Idiocracy before when you were saying another thing, and I forgot what it was. Oh yeah, I remember what it was. I was going to say that I wonder if Mike Judge drew any inspiration from the Running Man book when he was writing the script for Idiocracy, because you kind of have that similar thing of government and TV networks coalescing and kind of becoming one and the same.
Well, that was also what I meant when I was talking about Demolition Man, because in that future, it was the fast food franchises that took over the corporate world, not the movies things. Because if you remember, because fast food had taken over the world in Demolition Man, there's no longer any radio programs. They're all commercials. It's all commercials. All
Dwayne Elizondo, Mountain Dew, Herbert Camacho.
Yes.
I could never remember that by heart. I will have to look it up every time. No matter how many times, maybe if I've seen the movie like less than 5 minutes ago, I could remember it, but.
No, I can't ever remember all of that, which is odd because I could remember Juan Filipos Ramirez, the third.
I know.
Who do you know who that is?
No.
That is an Egyptian fellow who trained Duncan MacLeod to be an immortal and died in the tower on Mount McGinnon in Highlander.
They're making a new Highlander picture currently, right?
So I'm not at liberty to discuss my plans on disrupting that.
The only reason I know that is because fucking Drew McIntyre from WWE is in it, apparently.
All right, so we'll burn that bridge. We'll burn that bridge when we get to it. We're not there yet. I refuse to hate a movie that hasn't been made. Because and let me give you a cautionary tale on that stuff. I decided before the Barbie movie came out that I was going to hate it. And I do. But I hate it for totally different reasons than what I thought I would hate it for. It's actually, given the circumstances, a very good movie, especially if you want to clown on feminism, because it literally took a single dude being a man once for 5 minutes to completely revolutionize their society.
It was not without great deliberation that I titled my review video, "Oh my God, I think I love the Barbie movie." That's not
Sean
a thing
Connery.
I would ever do
That's
lightly.
his name. Yeah, Sean Connery. I couldn't remember fucking actor's name. Juan Filipos Ramirez III. and he's Egyptian, not Spanish.
That's a hell of a strange name for an Egyptian.
Well, there's more to it. At one point, he actually says his full name, and it's like that fucking town in Iceland with the goddamn Wales with like the 15-mile long fucking name.
Oh yeah, I know that town.
Yeah, and what's funny is that name actually means it's this town over here between the river next to the mountain, but not this town and not that town over there. And that's why the name is so long.
I'm gonna pull it up right now. I'm not going to try to say the name, but I'm just going to pull it up.
Oh, come on, dude. Give me at least one try.
All right. Do you want me to take one? Well, the problem is it is like every other Welsh word in that it has way the hell too many consonants and not nearly enough vowels. That's the kind of the distinguishing feature of the Welsh language. It is 58 letters long. Do you want me to try and say it?
No, and I don't care if you do, but if you could just start coughing, that'd be close enough.
All right, here goes. Lanfer pugli ingil goer witcher won drab willanti silo go gotch.
Right.
Look at that.
That sounds about right. And and they'll just spit that shit out. They'll be like, bleh. And it kind of sounds like
I understand they adopted the name kind of as a publicity stunt to attract more tourism to the town, and I guess it worked, so bully for them.
I personally know 3 people who have taken pictures next to that sign and 5 people who have photoshopped themselves into those pictures.
Yeah, it was in 1869 that they adopted it, and the literal translation is St. Mary's Church in the hollow of the White Hazel near to the rapid whirlpool of Lancilio of the Red Cave. So there's half a dozen different territorial descriptions just contained in the one name. So, well,
that was to distinguish it from the St. Mary's of the town to the left and the St. Mary's of the town to the right.
Yeah. Because everybody's got a St. Mary's. How do you tell one from the other?
But yeah, so this one's definitely different because you can't say where it's at without going there and pointing at the sign. So tourism made.
I want to see the rapid whirlpool. That sounds interesting.
I do too. I'm going to look that up. Talk to the people.
The rapid whirlpool of the Red Cave. The long name was supposedly contrived in 1869 as an early publicity stunt to give the station the longest name of any railway station in Britain. According to Sir John Morris Jones, the name was created by a local tailor whose name he did not confide, letting the secret die with him. This form of the name adds a reference to the whirlpool in the Menai Strait, known as the Swellies, and to the small chapel of St. Tisilio, located on a nearby island. The final Gogogach, or Red Cave, is supposed to have been an addition inspired by the Cardiganshire parish of thing I am not going to attempt to say, rather than by any local features.
Literally, you're a wise man.
I do my best.
Right. That place is wild. I'd like to go there just to go take a picture next to that fucking sign and get me a drink on the way out of town because I don't think there's anything else over there.
Can I throw a topic at you completely out of left field and you tell me what you think?
Hit me!
Half a dozen words. Rogue planets as a transportation system. Discuss.
All right, so there are at least 2 cases where this has been proposed as a method. One in the Star Wars universe in the Legends material, in which I think one of the names of the books involving it is Rogue Planet. And one, there's another one, I can't remember who did it. It was like Asimov or Lenz or freaking H.H. Beam Piper or somebody like that wrote it. And it's about... do you remember the old series, The Moon?
Yes.
Where big explosion, the moon gets slung out of orbit and just happens to fall perfectly into a slingshot orbit around the sun to get launched out on the elliptical plane. Anyway.
Yeah.
That, except in this future, it's like early 2000s and a comet comes through. And the comet is a part of this rogue planet, and somehow they figure out that the planet's on the way based on the fact that the comet's moving so slow. There must be something really heavy behind it dragging on it, right?
Mhm.
And I think the name of the book is Dark Body, but don't quote me on that. The premise that they used was that this rogue planet had been zipping around in space for so long that 99% of the heat in it has been sapped out by the deep space, right? The great black has done its damage to it. And so what they do is they put together like the Armageddon crew gets together with a drill crew and all that stuff, and they launch and zoom their happy asses out on a slingshot course all the way out to the orbit of Saturn, where they pick up the planet, they land, they start the drilling, they do as much as they can, and then they get back in their ships and start back. But even before they start back, another crew has gone out to take place and repeat, wash, rinse, repeat, and this planet zips around the solar system in a wild, weird orbit for a couple of months, long enough for them to get a base established on it, and then zoom right out into deep space toward Alpha Centauri, which they knew it was going to do, and is why they decided to try to use it as a generation ship. Here's the breaker point. If the planet has completely lost its heat, you're going to have to generate a massive amount of heat. And if we take enough uranium from us to generate that heat temporarily there, then we can use that energy in the generation not only of heat, but also of waste energy, which is usually heat. In this case, it's actually the energy derived because the heat's more valuable, to drill down to the core of the planet in question, where there should be more active uranium. And rinse, repeat, and you should be able to go as far as you want to go with zero control over where you're actually going. It is the dumbest possible interstellar body that you could possibly put together. But for generation ships and the idea of people living underground and making this type of thing work, it's not untenable. We have the technological capabilities to make it happen, provided we can find a soft entrance on the surface somewhere.
Or even if you didn't want to actually go to the surface or extract any resources that may or may not exist on the rogue planet, if you just wanted to hijack the thing for its angular momentum, if it was going in the direction you wanted to go, and you had a lot of time to spare and you were running generation ships or whatever, all you would have to do is get yourself in orbit around the thing, and it's going to take care of your angular velocity. It's going to get you in the direction you need to go with a drastically lower expenditure of energy on your part, because all you've got to do is stay in orbit around this thing, as opposed to actually generating the thrust to travel in the direction. And we have found so shockingly many of these things already, even though they are next to impossible to see, yet they don't put off any light, obviously. So you have to be specifically looking for the damn things. And the only way to look for them is to identify, the diffraction of the light that's being emitted by the objects that are behind them in your field of view. So even though incredibly difficult, incredibly tedious, incredibly time consuming, we've still found a couple thousand of the things so far in just a little tiny bit of looking just in our local neighborhood. And it seems like the kind of things that really advanced spacefaring societies may well have found a way to exploit for travel purposes in a variety of different ways. Like you were mentioning, if you could not only get in orbit around the thing, but also send a smaller craft down, and if the planet you were orbiting had resources that you could extract and use for your own sustenance or your own propulsion or whatever it is,
that would be the only purpose, would be to utilize the planet's resources.
There's even the possibility that you could attach a thruster to the thing and speed it along its way. If like a Shkadev thruster, I believe it's called.
Yeah. Or just timed explosions like on the moon in that one show.
Well, that was just something I got to thinking about when I was reading on. I saw the number of those that we've discovered so far, and I was really kind of shocked by how high it is.
Yeah, there's a bunch.
If that's the number just that we've discovered so far, can you imagine how many there will be when our observational capability improves? They're going to be probably like freaking grains of sand on the beach almost, because there's any number of ways that a planetary-sized body can be ejected from a star system.
And there's a number of ways that planetary-sized bodies can form from large moons that were ejected from a solar system. So it may not even be a rogue planet assembled in a solar system. It could be a rogue moon that assembled planetary material in the black. And in that case, we have no fucking clue what it would look like.
And I think that goes also a long way toward explaining why, of all the exoplanets we've discovered so far, a majority of them are only single planet, and the single planet is a hot Jupiter, just with no other planets rotating around the star really close. And the reason why there's a hot Jupiter and nothing else is because that hot Jupiter either consumed all the other planets in the system, or they were ejected by its gravity and became part of our very healthy rogue planet population. And they might be the most common planetary objects in the cosmos, for all we know.
Yeah, they might be. Anything from the moon-sized all the way up to like just below Jupiter size, sailing around out there. And here's the funny thing about it. This is where things get absolutely fucking bonkers. You can have a planet, I think, 3 times the size of Jupiter. It gets launched out of its rotational orbit by any number of perturbances or something. Another planet gets snatched out of orbit, and this one flies out of orbit because it's gone now. This thing goes out to that space in between stars. It's hot as hell compared to the environment it's in. As it's slowly off-gassing its heat, which that's the wrong word, but we're going to go with it, slowly losing its heat, all of the hydrogen, all of the helium, all of the heavy metals, everything in this planet that makes it a gas giant condenses down into a super concentrated and dense crust. It's no longer a gas giant. All of those gases, all of that energy, all of that stuff is compressed down into an almost 0 Kelvin body. These things are virtually impossible to spot because they give off no heat, they offer no reflections, they have no light source, they have no volcanism or anything else like that going on the surface where it's observable. And so something like this could easily just pass anywhere near the outer ranges of our solar system, and suddenly we're in for a really fucked up day. And we can't even register that this thing's sailing around out there because we don't know it's there. We won't find out about it until the gravitational effects start throwing asteroids and various moons at us. We lose part of fucking Pluto or some shit. Ceres is slung out of orbit.
And we know there have been events like that in the history of our own solar system, because of things we can observe, like the fact that Uranus rotates on its fucking side. There had to be a serious goddamn gravitational perturbation in order to induce that status quo. And there's other things, there's orbits of certain planets and certain asteroids.
Venus.
That don't make any sense unless there is some kind of event like that knocked things all cattywampus at some point in the distant past.
So one of the things about Venus that a lot of people don't understand is the way it is tidally locked to the sun makes its days absurdly long. They're actually longer than the year on Venus, but that doesn't matter because the same side of Venus is always facing the sun. That being said, the only way mathematically that a normal planet in a normal orbital sphere rotating at normal speeds up in that position is if a very large spatial body, almost its equal, were orbiting at a slower speed and then crashed into it in an oblique angle enough to stop that fucker from spinning. And then it becomes tidally locked to the sun and you get Venus.
And Venera 15 lands and transmits pictures for 8 minutes before it gets crushed to shit by the...
Right. If you're going to go into Venus, you're going to be living in bounce houses. Giant beach ball bounce houses. I'm not joking. I'm dead serious.
Or blimps in the upper atmosphere.
Sure, you could blimp it, but I don't think that's necessary. I think you could probably use air diffuser purifiers and literally draw off enough carbon to create enough oxygen through electrolysis and various other chemical methods. And all the chemistry is right there in the upper atmosphere of Venus, that the only thing stopping us is the technology of getting there and supplying us while we develop the giant freaking see-through bag so we can grow shit.
Right, and
It just-
for all we know, there's a non-zero chance that biological organisms might exist in the Venus cloud tops.
Actually, that's. Go ahead.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
That's another another interesting point is that if there's not biological material already there, the introduction of our biological material as off-gassing of these blimps or bounce houses, beach balls, whatever you want to call them, might very well change the future history of chemistry of Venus enough to do some very strange things to the atmosphere we've ever run.
Yeah, because I believe we are observing phosphine in those cloud tops, and there shouldn't be phosphine there. So that's a big mystery. And now we're doing the thing that we do. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks ever so much for joining us here on the Blast Radius tonight. We hope you enjoyed the discussion just as much as we did. We hope you have a great tomorrow and a pleasant day after and an edifying rest of your week. I will not be here next Sunday. I know that troubles you greatly. I'm going to be at a certain person's college graduation who's going to be giving birth to my first grandchild in a 12 or so weeks. So that's very exciting. But anyway, I will be gone on the road. So see you next 2 weeks from now on May, whatever the hell date that is. We'll see you tomorrow. Not tomorrow. We'll see you next time. Have a great week. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
This one's for you, buddy. Nice.